This is the Callisto Protocol. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So, what are we getting here on the Series X? Well, we have two options. The first, which we're on right now, is a quality mode. So the quality mode is obviously 30 FPS, when it smoothly hits that, at a 4K resolution. So the first thing to note is both modes, so there's quality and there's performance, both modes run at a dynamic 4K resolution. Performance mode targets 60 FPS, and then quality mode is 30 FPS. So the big difference here is that quality mode grants you additional shadows and higher quality shadows through ray tracing effects. There's also supposed to be ray traced reflections, but apparently that is bugged right now and not working properly. From what I've noticed, both modes seem to exhibit performance drops quite often in cutscenes and during some segments of gameplay throughout the experience. I played the vast majority of my time with the performance mode, so I would say that I definitely noticed more issues in that regard during the performance mode. Obviously, you get to some smaller locations, it seems to, be a bit better. And if you have VRR, variable refresh rate, I think that helps a lot in regards to making sure that the performance level is kept good. So this is a single-player game similar to Dead Space. It was basically, we don't have the rights to make Dead Space, we want to make a new Dead Space. Let's copy the designs, concepts, and world while doing our own little thing with it. Now, the effects of which I don't think were necessarily successful. So for me, I did not like this game. And I will mention that there is also HDR support. Sorry, I gotta get that in there too. So I did not enjoy this game at all. I really hated this one. I found it kind of annoying, traumatic, and painfully boring. I have a lot of thoughts to go over on this title, as why it's one of the worst games I've played. And it's just this combination of issues that sort of mount. One of them being the checkpoint system. So the game loads incredibly fast. It's actually quite impressive. But the checkpoints are absolutely brutal. One sec, we're going to switch over just to show off the photo mode. So checkpoints are a pain. Most of the time, you're essentially stuck in this really awkward scenario where you have to go back really far and do annoying points, or you're stuck in a sequence where you're basically having to immediately fight something that you are not able to fight. It's so random, and it seems like they took absolutely no time in actually setting up the checkpoint system. And that's a lot of the game, is it just seems like there wasn't that extra little bit of polish to make it fun. There's lots of sliding through vents, moving along walls really slowly, moving through meandering slow areas, waiting for enemies to slowly appear. It's really, really awkward, and you're almost never actually prepared for any of the sequences that come ahead. So the game has a bit of a random loot generation system, where basically, you go to open up a box, and you don't know what you're going to get. There's this one sequence, a hallway. I spent an hour and a half doing this hallway sequence. And, yeah, I tried normal difficulty, and this is a big point here, that if you are going to play this game, you do you, totally fine, but if there is a game I could say, hey, don't play this, I don't think it's worth playing, it would be this one. Play on easy difficulty. And easy difficulty isn't really easy. It's still brutal. I actually didn't even notice a difference between playing on normal or easy difficulty. I even have a number of assists on to make it a little bit easier, including auto dodge, auto aim, and sometimes melee assist I would use as well, but melee assist kind of makes it so that your character is basically, sometimes you swing during boss fights, which isn't good. And that's another thing, is the boss fight design is just absolutely horrendous. You are basically stuck in these really awkward areas. So there's, I don't know how to describe it. There's like one, or let's say like 3 kind of bosses, and one of them you fight like 4 times over. It is just absolutely annoying fighting the same sort of thing over and over and over again. And that's what this game is. But this one boss that has 2 heads is always in really, really tight tight spots, and it teleports its slashes through walls, through areas, and it is mind-numbingly obnoxious. And you see the same death animations over and over and over and over again. And some of them are pretty long, and you can't skip anything. Like, you're stuck with cutscenes, you're stuck with moments, you can't skip anything. So it becomes this long, tedious grind and slow build for you to actually do anything in this game. It is honestly just exhausting to play. And that's my big issue with the Callisto Protocol, is it's just traumatic almost in terms of how some of the combat is done. And you have to hit them over and over and over and over again. Like, some enemies, they will take who knows how many slashes, hits, smashes. Like, some of them take up to 12, and it's like, shoot the tentacles, but then they don't give you any bullets. You're constantly starved of anything. And you might think, oh, that makes you conserve bullets. No, it doesn't. Your bullets don't do any damage. It's just a mild inconvenience. So we're turning on the performance mode, by the way, 4K 60 dynamic again. And you know, it's just like you're basically just mildly inconveniencing these enemies that are fighting you, and your bullets just don't do anything. That being said, oh, come on. What's the point of a manual save? Am I right? Sorry, it's just, man, I really hate this game passionately. It is so bad. Sorry, it's just, yeah, the checkpoint save system just mind-blowing. Anyways, it's exhausting to play, it's tiring, it goes on and on, it's not tense, it's not exciting, it's not scary. I wasn't scared ever. See, the thing is, and I hope I'm not all over the place with this review, there's just lots and lots to talk about with this one. Like, it looks really good. That's something I was kind of wanting to mention on the picture area that I was showing off, but the character facial animations and acting performances are excellent. They look incredibly realistic. The world is beautiful. It's gory, it's violent. Some of the death animations a little plasticky in their design, but there's a fair bit of them, I guess. But it's just like, it's that next-gen, current-gen shine, but with no substance behind it. Just long walks down pipes and corridors and areas over and over again. And yeah, the lighting is cool, it's atmospheric, and there's this great snow sequence that looks really cool, and they take you to some varied spaces. But the gameplay is just the same enemies over and over and over again, in the same scenarios, with the same sort of slow movement, and it punishes you if you make any, well, not even if you make mistakes, it'll just outright kill you sometimes, randomly. And it's not like it's challenging. It's just brutally annoying and obnoxious. Like I said when I was streaming this, I had no fun playing this game. There wasn't really a moment of enjoyment I had. I didn't really care much about the characters, because they didn't really get a whole lot of, like, I guess you would say, time to shine, or it didn't really dive into them very much. It was just kind of you walking through areas over and over again. Performance is good, but if there's not enough excitement or intrigue or dimensions to your cast, it doesn't really matter. Like, there's one guy, and it's like, I think you're supposed to kind of care about this individual, but I just really did not at all. Same with another character later on that becomes a big pivotal point. I was just like, why do I care about this? I haven't really gotten to know them. It's just this one dude just wandering around, getting all gory and messed up by, like, these monstrous creatures. Actually, I wish they would have dove into the lore and the backdrop of the game a little bit more, because that sounded pretty cool, what they were sort of teasing and setting up as you get later on in the game, but you don't really get much of any of it. It's weird, like, it's several hours, unless you spend an hour and a half in a hallway like I did. There's a New Game Plus coming in a later update, so that might be available for you by the time you jump in. But it's just kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just really not what I was looking for. It's not what I was hoping for. You know, a Dead Space-like game. Because let's be real here. This is Dead Space, right? Like, this is just a Dead Space game. That doesn't seem like it would be a very hard thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, it really doesn't. But it's not like they're, you know, really doing scares. It's not like they're really making anything to it. It's like kind of action-driven. And just, again, really, really annoying and tiring to play. It gets exhausting. To the point of, like, I was really done with it a couple hours in. And by, like, I think it was 10.5 hours when I finished, you know, again with the hour-and-a-half hallway scene, I was just absolutely morally defeated. I don't think I've ever been this just beat down by a game. And I've played quite a few games. And again, I didn't feel as though I was challenged by the game. I didn't feel like the game was, like, difficult. It was just tiring. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to describe it. It was just absolutely demoralizing to such a high emotional level that it felt honestly traumatic. And, you know, I think there's a decent game in here. You know, if they could get those checkpoints going smoother, if they could make it so that you had health at any point in the game. Like, there's a system where you're able to 3D print stuff, but it's, like, impossible to 3D print stuff because you never have any credits. You know, I looked around in the world to try to find little areas, and, you know, even if you go off the beaten path, they punish you for doing so. It's just extreme punishment. And there's very few areas where you can do that. Because that's what I was saying, is like you get some credits by picking up these items that you can sell. But the thing is, it's like you never really find them, or you rarely find them, and you try to put that money into upgrading your guns, because you need that to be able to even be semi-effective in the game. And it's just like this really long, punishing journey that doesn't feel rewarding, doesn't feel very interesting. It's very sort of like storyline predictable. The characters weren't very dynamic. I just really wasn't that impressed by this game. And again, where I say this is like one of the worst games I've played, it's not in the sense that, like, you know what, there's some technical issues. There is, you know, I think I could be fair, and I think others can be fair and say, yeah, you know, there's performance issues across the modes that does hamper things a little bit. You know, some of the cutscenes run at, like, you know, awkward frame rates, basically, dipping like crazy. But for me, it's not necessarily like a technical issue. It's not like we had crashes or anything like that. This is one of those scenarios where I say it's worse, as in the sense that I didn't at all enjoy. I didn't have fun. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel any tension. I didn't feel really any excitement. Like, cool, oh, it's gory, it's violent, you know, it's like a spiritual successor to Dead Space, cool. But at the same time, it feels so bad to me. Like, I don't know how else to describe it to really get it across, that it's one of those scenarios where I passionately hate this game. Because it just really bored and kind of broke me emotionally almost, to a degree. Because I wanted to like the setup, you know, the first 2 hours I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting, it's kind of intriguing, you're thrown into the situation, but I feel like they really didn't do anything with it. I was just a guy shuffling along hallways, and then getting into these scenarios where I'm constantly, I don't know how to describe it, like, it didn't even seem like the scenarios were well designed to be interesting, because I was really just kind of going one hallway to the next. But they don't really give you room to be creative within those hallways, if that makes sense. It's very, very tight linear spaces, but yet they expect you to basically mash through zombies. Hence the brutal hallway scene I had, where, you know, essentially it's this small hallway where you can't backtrack, you can't run by the enemies, you can't use stealth, you have to fight them. And it says, you know, use the bullets to fight the tentacles. And, you know, I was sitting there just restarting the checkpoint till I got to a point where I was able to have bullets. Because, again, it's random loot. So I was essentially getting, like, credits, like little bits of credits and everything like that. And, you know what I mean? And that looks really beautiful. I love the art direction. and like the look of the game. It really does, you know, like I said, next gen, current gen shine. It's gorgeous. But like I say, it's just like the substance behind it isn't very good. Like the places you visit are cool. The enemies look neat. Some of the flesh and stuff is just unsettling. The character models, the sweat, you know, the way that the costumes and the outfits get damaged or get, like, you know, liquid on them. And it's just, that's really cool, but yet your characters, you don't care about them. You don't really care about what's happening too much. The mystery isn't that grabbing, it isn't that intriguing. And the gameplay itself isn't very engaging or fun. It's just tiring and exhausting. And you fight, again, this boss that seems like a huge boss that's like really, really pushed. You fight it 4 times, over and over and over again. Like, you literally fight it, and then 20 minutes later, it's like, there it is again in a slightly different space. And it plays the same way, and it feels cheap. Where you're spending like 20 minutes, half an hour on easy difficulty, doing very, very simplistic enemies. And it's absolutely tiring, because it feels kind of cheap. And that's where I'm talking about the setup of these rooms, where you're kind of moving through these spaces, and you don't really get, like, your character does everything in a very tedious way. And I don't know if I've gotten that really across. So it's like, to switch your guns, your character has to, like, readjust them, or has to add ammo to them. And sometimes you'll think your character has done so, but they haven't. And you spend 90% of your game with this pistol. And it's only at the end of the game do you get something like an assault rifle or like a shotgun. It takes forever to get your hands on anything more powerful. And when you do, you don't have any ammo for them. So it just becomes, like, again, a point where it's like no health, no ammo. And to use your health, you have to sit there and very, very slowly eject this thing into your neck. So if you need health during combat, this is what you have to do. You're just screwed. You can't heal yourself. So there's no quick heal. That is the quick heal. And it's just this slow, tedious, annoying, and exhausting experience, where by the end of it, I was just so done with it. I was calling it, again, one of the worst games I've ever played. And I hope that I'm getting across throughout the entirety of this review. If you've gone through it all, I'm sure some people just listen to 2 sentences and then complain, but you know, if you've gone through it, I hope you can kind of see the perspective I'm saying, where it's kind of like this slow walking journey with repetitive tasks, repetitive enemies, rooms that feel cheap in their design and don't allow you to properly fend off enemies. Weird pop-ups that interrupt your gameplay in a very awkward way that almost feels unsettling and unnatural. A weird way to listen to audio logs, where you gotta kind of pause everything what you're doing to listen to them. A lack of world that tells you what's going on. It's very, very linear in design. Like, you're literally moving just one room to the next. You know, there might be one area where you veer off, but I think it's pretty straightforward. You know where you're going the entire time. It just really wasn't anything that I found to be really that intriguing. Like, it's just literally an exhausting, tedious, I don't know, I guess you would say recipe for just disaster. I got so tired of playing this game and dealing with checkpoints that are just tiring, or having to refight the same things, or just really giving up the will to do this kind of game, even on an easy difficulty. Like, if I play easy, you know, I want to just enjoy the game and finish it. You know, very rarely am I pushed from, say, normal to go down to an easier difficulty. And this one just absolutely throttled and thrashed me. And like I said, I don't even think I could really notice a difference between easy and normal. It really felt just as brutal between both options. And that in itself is crazy. So this is just an exhausting, brutal, sad change of the Dead Space formula. I wanted tension. I wanted scares. I wanted to be, you know, entertained and delighted and surprised. And it just really didn't deliver that. Once again, a next-gen shine, while lacking, you know, the excitement and the intrigue of a game that really makes it worthwhile to play. And I really do not suggest or recommend this game. And that was a huge waste of ammo, but we're just nearing the end.